Good evening to our guest tonight, David McComb.
Howdy.
How you doing?
Very good.
Glad you found us all right.
Yes, no, it wasn't that hard.
Still feeling your way around Melbourne.
Still, but armed with the Melways, you can only go so far on.
Can't miss, really, can you? Was Melbourne a professional or personal choice as a place to settle?
Ooh, bit of both. It was a practical choice. Most of the musicians I know who I wanted to work with are all based in Melbourne, much more so than in the mid-80s when a lot of them were in Sydney or in London.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the people who were in London have returned here that I know, people from bands like the Moodists. And it was just, it's actually a bit more practical in terms of rent than Sydney. I mean, it's just a bit more economical.
A bit cheaper down here, definitely. The Played is from an upcoming album?
Yeah, finally got it together to do a record of my own that I've been planning to do for about 4 years now, and I finally signed a deal with Mushroom, or with the White Label, early this year, and did it then.
Right. And the songs cover that 4-year period, or they're more recent?
No, they do cover that period. I think there was an emphasis. You tend to obviously feel more attached to the ones you've just written if they suit your frame of mind at the time that you're releasing the record. But, you know, it's quite a good way of judging the quality of the songs, because if they're 4 years old and they're still really good and strong and they still cut through to you, then you'll know they'll be good songs.
Right. So is there any new directions musically on the album compared to your past work, or?
See, well, the Triffids, I'm sure lots of, people that accused us of being eclectic would agree, went in a lot of different directions, with their music. They did, from album to album, we did, I guess, what people would call country music. We dabbled in, I guess, the beginnings of, towards the end of the 80s, we used a lot of electronics and programming in our music. And this record is really, I pulled back from all that, and although there's variety amongst the songs, the only way you could describe it is, it's very song-orientated music, and it's just rock music with, touches of blues or country.
Mm-hmm. And very importantly, who's on it?
I assembled a really good bunch of people to work on it. A couple of ex-Triffids, Martin Casey, who's now at the Bad Seeds, Graham Lee, lives in Melbourne, and sort of head of the Melbourne Country Music Mafia. They're on it, and a couple of Melbourne musicians. Peter Luscombe plays with people like the Black Sorrows, and Bruce Hames, who plays with people like Steve Cummings, and a couple of other. Well, my brother Rob does some whistling on it, and a guy called Warren Lee Ellis, who's a sort of enfant sauvage. He's the current wild man of Melbourne rock, and he plays some electric violin on it.
Uh-huh.
That's.
We'll go back and talk about the Triffids for a little while. There was never really any formal announcement of a split there, was there?
No, because there was never really the sufficient degree of acrimony to really, for us to get out the lawyers and for us to put messages in the press saying due to musical differences or, drug problems or something, the band is now splitting up. And, for a while, we kept alive the idea of maybe at the end of the 80s we thought, okay, we'll just at least have a year or two off and then see how it goes from there. But I think once we did have a year or two off, everyone went in and did their, separate activities, and a lot of this involved people having babies, and that changes everything for people. And I limited to just getting a dog instead. But it meant that like some people went to live in Perth, some people stayed in England, and so after a couple of years, it became pretty obvious that there won't really be, any Triffids Triffids reunion without the requisite, $2.5 million or something.
Would you prefer to done it the other way? Had a big, the big announcement, the big farewell tour.
It
and all that?
certainly would have. It would have made sense as far as selling records and promote. Really, the way you should do these things is, decide to do them and then do a farewell tour, do a live album, which we did, and then do a compilation album, which we're going to do, but tie it all in with one big last tour, and that's the serious way to make money. As ever, the Triffids were not on the cutting edge of how to make money in the 80s.
Right. Not financially minded.
We made a bit, but boy, it seemed to leave us in a hurry.
What was it like back in Perth during the early days? What was the local scene like over there? Do you remember it much?
I mean, we didn't think so at the time that it was a particularly lively music scene. But looking back on it, it was. I mean,
It's turned out some great bands over the years.
Yeah, I mean, back, I was a sort of teenager going to see the local punk bands, and punk was a real big thing for me, sort of when I was about 15, 16. And the local versions of punk were, early versions of the Scientists, and before the Scientists they were called the Cheap Nasties. And then the version of the Hoodoo Gurus, or it only really had Dave Faulkner and James Baker in it. That was called The Victims, and both those bands were really quite individualistic punk bands. They were quite like the New York Dolls. They weren't like English punk bands so much. And it was very lively. I mean, even a band like the Triffids, when we were starting off, would always get a lot of people going to see us. It's just a pity that sort of a quarter of those were skinheads, Nazis who had nothing else to do on the night, and we were the only band that had any tenuous connection with punk. And so they'd come and sort of seek pile in front of us and smash windows. There was, a very big English Nazi skinhead scene in Perth then. That was the sickest thing about the scene then. There was, you'd always be going out and seeing people getting their head kicked in, at victim shows or scientist shows or even Triffid shows, and it was pathetic.
Did the Triffids, did overseas recognition come while you were still based in Perth, or after you'd moved east?
No, I mean, we'd started sending a few records overseas when we were planning to go there, and very slowly we got just a bit of, a few people sending back queries and a couple of reviews, and then when we went to actually live in the UK for the first time in the second half of 84, we just sort of started playing live at small clubs and just slowly started getting some good reviews. And then, because the music press there goes to Europe, people in European countries got to be reading it. Then we started getting bookings over in Belgium and Holland, and started doing tours there. That's how it really happened. No, nothing. I mean, no, we never thought that it was possible to reach the rest of the world from Perth.
I read somewhere that you didn't originally plan to be lead vocalist with the Triffids.
Very, very early on.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any sort of natural voice at all, no natural pitching ability. And I've just, battled with that, and I have to battle for every note. I mean, and some people just can open their mouths and hit D minor or hit D sharp or something. Hit D minor. And so very early on, particularly when I was still in high school, and when you first start getting into rhythm and blues music and Aretha Franklin and things, and you sort of, when you first hear singers like that, you think, well, there's no point in competing with them, so you should try and go for the best. So I used to harbour visions when I was still at school of trying to find Aretha Franklin in Australia and get her to front the band. But when that proved impractical, I was quite happy
She may have been down the Kentucky Fried with Al.
Exactly. Yeah. She gets 3 buckets.
The In the Pines album, I'm going to play a track from that in a tick. What was the strategy behind going way out there to do that?
Sort of influenced by, reacting against being in modern clinical recording studios, which are all the same wherever you are in the world, and wanting to go somewhere with a bunch of friends, cut off, and it was a very isolated piece of country. It's a long way from anywhere. Sort of on the edge of the arable part of the Nullarbor, and there's no real reason why you can't take a recording equipment anywhere and record somewhere which has great atmosphere. We also were just about to get signed to Island Records internationally, and we knew that they wouldn't, they would probably be pretty freaked out if our first record was recorded in a wool shed for about $900. So we thought it's a good time to do it now, because we knew that the next
they won't let you do it. Yeah.
I mean, not so much they wouldn't let us. I mean, it would be pointless, to do it on a major label anyway. But while we were still unsigned, it was a good time to do it. And at that stage, we had a few songs that we had an excess of songs, and a lot of them seemed to be suited to a sort of rough and ready recording. A lot of people really loved that record. I mean, people who are generally more independent music like that more than the more produced records. I like both of them, but I'd like to do In the Pines again sometime and do it better. I still would have preferred to have just recorded it a little bit better.
Yeah. How much your album? How did you feel about the budget that was suddenly behind you with that one?
I'm very happy. I've got no problem with spending a lot of record company money. Well, I mean, it's our money really, but at the time it's their money. I mean, I've never, even though I was a punk rocker, I mean, a lot of my favourite records have always been, really lavish records, and records like Berlin by Lou Reed. I mean, the budget for that must have, at the time, made Callinger look absolutely minuscule. And I've always wanted to do a record. I've always been a big Phil Spector fan. Always wanted to do a record with really big arrangements.
A big wall of sound.
Yeah, and that was the chance to do it. And, we'd got the In the Pines thing out of our system for the time being. And it was fantastic. It was just like layering things. And, hey, there's some tubular bells over there. Let's go and use them. And, I loved it. It was great fun. I mean, it is a bit like, I suppose, a movie like Apocalypse Now, and you're hoping that it doesn't turn into Heaven's Gate and become a total disaster. It is sort of mad.
Yeah.
Often making a record for a long time does go into sort of madness as you watch the budget go up, and that was definitely like that. And we ran out of studio time, and so we'd have to change studios. And that's why it's got so many studios credited. And we were doing, the last 3 weeks was sort of 16 hours a day, and I don't think that's people work for longer hours than that, but I don't think it's very productive to work for more than 12 hours a day. I don't really think I think your judgment goes after a while.
Start to lose it. Yeah.
Yeah, and towards the end we were sleeping in the studio, and so there's definitely some madness by the end of it. But for what it is, I mean, I always think that records should just have a law unto themselves, and they make sense unto themselves. And In the Pines, you like that for different sort of reasons than you'd like Callinger. But I sort of like both.
Did you expect that was the one to be sort of like a crossover for you to break you into more of a mainstream market?
I really don't.
You didn't go into it with that in mind?
I mean, I'm sort of aware of all those sort of things, but and I think I'm not naive about the business, but I don't think it helps you any to think about it all the time. I don't see how that's going to really help the sort of music. Gil, the producer, was probably more aware of, because he had had success with Echo and the Bunnymen before. He probably knew what that meant to have hit singles and stuff. But I literally would have just, if it had happened, it would have been fine. But
You went
it
too
didn't
fast.
really. No.
Do you write a song with a particular vehicle in mind? Or like, this one's going to be for my solo album, this one's going to be for Black Eyed Susans, or
Not at the time. It becomes sort of apparent.
when you finished it?
Yeah. Often, when I'd write a song which I found too embarrassingly personal, I'd then give it to Gilbert and the Triffids. I stopped doing that after a while because it was just, it was a bit chicken. But, when things were very blunt, I'd just sort of escape the issue by getting her to sing it. Now I wouldn't do that so much. I'd, do it myself. When I say I'm critical of the stuff, I'm probably not in a technical way, but I have to have something that excites me at the heart of a song before I'm interested in doing it.
Right. Original plan for Black Eyed Susans, that was more or less a part-time thing for you originally, wasn't it?
Yeah, because of all the time that we'd spend, or I would spend in Perth. I eventually, got to be friends with Phil Coolest, who was in a very early lineup of the Triffids. And, we had nothing to do for these long Perth summers, and so we just formed it as a holiday band. And mainly utilising the voice of Rob Snarsky. Because he's the opposite of me, he's a proper singer.
Production, is that a field you want to dabble in a bit? Because you did some of your own stuff with the Triffids, didn't you?
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, if I really felt that the act was something that I was besotted with and could really be of great help to, then I'd do it. But if it's just going to be a slog out, producers do make sort of a lot more money than musicians generally. They work very long hours. And once again, the technical side of things, I wouldn't be that interested. Really the only production work I've done outside of the Triffids has been with the Black Eyed Susans when Rob sings a song, like we did one, Ocean of You,
Mm-hmm.
or we did an EP called Depends What You Mean by Love, and I basically produced that. But it wasn't a huge album or anything, so it was manageable.
The new Black Eyed Susans album, your only vocal contribution is a Leonard Cohen cover.
Yeah, we had to define who was the singer in the band, what's the focus in the band, and for a long time, when we started off, I actually did 2/3 of the stuff, and the Susans started at the very beginning, and then it was about half and half. But really, I think we all decided that I was doing my record, and I was putting a lot of time into that, and it would just be too confusing for people to, for there not to be a focus, and so Rob Snarsky is decidedly the lead singer of that band,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the guest singer, and Phil Coolest produced it, and that's worked out really well, I think.
You're quite happy with that?
Yeah, I think it's great. Phil and I sort of co-wrote 8 of the songs, so I still feel like I had a strong sort of part in it. But, Phil had organised all the production really well, and I think it's better that Rob assumes centre stage with that band.
Mm-hmm. I read somewhere recently that was a song that you did back in your younger days in Perth.
Yeah, it's quite funny. That really was when we started off, we used to do a version of that song, Memories. It's from the Phil Spector, Leonard Cohen album, which is a pretty wild album, which is not terribly well received at the time, but I've always really liked it. And I've done that. Did that at a Leonard Cohen tribute night the other week too.